Okay, here we go. Good evening, baseball fans. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network, the only exclusive baseball podcast on the Grid Network. I'm Mike Guido. That's Dalton Brown. We are back from our long vacation, I would say, after the World Series concluded, after my beloved Yankees took the fall to his, again, beloved Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm sure he's still riding the high about that, and he's had a good start to the offseason, I'll say that as well. But Dalton, how are we feeling, my friend? Obviously, we'll talk about Juan Soto. We'll talk about the Dodgers bringing in Blake Snell. That was obviously a massive signing, maybe the first big domino to fall in the offseason. But how are we feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously feeling good, man. It's a good time to be a Dodger fan. When everybody else in the league starts to really hate you, is when usually that means that you're having a lot of fun as a sports fan, and that goes not just for baseball but any other sport. So, yeah, I mean, I got nothing to complain about from a baseball fan perspective. Looking forward to this offseason and seeing where all the other dominoes end up falling. And enjoying everything else. Duke basketball started, which for me is a big deal as well. So a lot of fun stuff going on.
Yeah, I thought it was funny. I have a little something to show you. So my wife went down to North Carolina to visit her sister and their kids and her husband and everything like that. And she comes back home and she's like, "I got you a present." And I said, "Oh, what is it?" And she got me a little Duke basketball. Isn't that funny?
Nice. How do you feel about that?
I'm fine with it. I don't have any animosity towards Duke. Here's the thing. I'm a Florida Gator fan at heart, but college basketball, like I've always kind of appreciated Kansas just because I liked them as a kid. I liked their logo. I liked their colors. There was no other reason just other than that. So I liked Kansas, but I don't have any animosity towards Duke. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. I don't care enough about college basketball that much to hate Duke that much, to be honest with you.
Well, good for you.
All right, so busy show today, obviously. We'll talk about Juan Soto. We'll talk about Blake Snell going to the Dodgers, some of the other tea leaves that have kind of fallen. Frankie Montas signed with the Mets last night. Matthew Boyd ended up signing a contract today as well. We'll talk about that. He ends up going to the Chicago Cubs. And we'll make some predictions. We have a list of 15 free agents that we will make predictions for. We haven't done it. Winter meetings are next week. That's really where stuff starts to go down. So we'll talk about that. Hopefully this offseason is a lot quicker than some of the ones we've had in years past. And we'll touch a little bit more on that once we get into the Blake Snell business. But okay, let's start with this. So Juan Soto, this is a very nerve-wracking topic for me, only because, as the incumbent team for Juan Soto, I know that it's going to be costly, and the amount of competition and who that competition is with is kind of nerve-wracking and also very annoying. I want to know your thoughts on this. I kind of want to throw this out there, right? Because we kind of understand how these things go in Major League Baseball. And I'm not going to be the one that's just like that reads every little tiny thing. But I do think that there is something to this. I do think the Yankees are in a position that not a lot of other fan bases want to acknowledge. Like, I do think that there's something to be said about Juan Soto spending the last year with the Yankees. Like, I think that that's something to be said. But I also think that Scott Boras is a hell of an agent. I do. The guy is he is so good at pushing all the right buttons. Nobody can tell me, after all of this noise that happened over Thanksgiving weekend, I'm still not ever going to be convinced that the Red Sox have a legit shot at this. I don't. I have zero, I would say virtually zero expectation that the Red Sox are legitimately in this. I also don't think the Toronto Blue Jays are legitimately in this. I don't think that the Dodgers are legitimately in this. I think it's going to come down to the Yankees and the Mets. The Mets because they have tons of money, and the Yankees because they're the incumbent, and that's just going to be the end of it. I think the rest of it Is Boris pushing the right button? Am I speaking as a crazy Yankee fan, or am I actually making some sense?
So, look, it's funny. You and I were texting earlier about how we wanted to handle the topics for tonight's show,
Yeah.
and the three topics I sent you over had Blake Snell to the Dodgers as the number one topic and Soto as the number two. And
Yeah.
for me, the only reason I had them ordered in that way is because there's really nothing new to talk about here.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the tough thing with off-season conversations like this is, well, we don't know anything, right? I mean, here's the thing. Between now and whenever Soto signs, there are going to continue to be random rumors and alleged tea leaves that pop up. The reality is, Mike, we don't know anything.
Right. Yep.
We don't, right? Like, I can understand how for you as a Yankee fan, you both do imagine and also want to imagine that the Yankees are the front runner to sign him. And
Yep.
I would not be at all surprised if you're right. But Juan Soto is also a guy that's kind of said over and over that he's going to sign wherever he's offered the most money, which in theory opens up the entire league. And so, look, is there a world where he has this amazing relationship with, Big Papi and Rafi Devers, and the Red Sox offer him a ton of money and promise them that they're going to go out and spend, and he signs there? I think that world exists. I'm not saying I think it's likely. Same thing with hey, is there a world where he signs in Toronto or with the Dodgers or with the Phillies even? Who knows, right? I mean, the reality is we have no clue. So it could be a team that comes out of left field. I mean, I think the most likely places for him to land are in New York. But I don't doubt that the Dodgers are having the conversation seriously. I don't doubt that the Red Sox are in serious conversations about it. I just think that the Mets and Yankees are uniquely positioned to drive each other upward on price until somebody calls uncle and gives up.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. I think that it's so funny, right? Because I mean, it was the perfect weekend to make it happen, right? It was the Thanksgiving, Black Friday weekend. Every major reporter was taking time off and spending time with their family. They were not scrolling on Twitter like me and the rest of the rest of us crazies, right? So you had this one Boston guy, right? I'm sure you saw the Mick report, right? Where it's just like, oh yeah, Juan Soto's deal with the Red Sox is done. I'm not going to lie to you. I sat there for a second and I was like, okay, that doesn't sound very good. And Jeff Passan comes out 4 or 5 hours later and is just like, you know what I'm grateful for this Thanksgiving is fake fucking reporters that don't know shit. Oh my God. I think
the reality though, nobody actually knows anything.
Nobody does.
So,
No, nobody does. None of the big guys know. I mean, listen, Jack Curry, who's the Yankees version of Jeff Passan, literally just said, listen, all I can tell you is that the Yankees feel good. That's it. I can't tell you what way Soto's leaning. I can't tell you anything else other than that. I can tell you that the Yankees feel good. And I think that's as much information as anybody can get from anyone, right? You're going to get more information from teams than you are from the player. That's just the bottom of the line. So yes, I do think, as far as that's concerned, there is here's the thing. I don't know that it's as black and white as people think. I know that there's a certain circumstance where yeah, you don't want to go above the ridiculous where okay, if the Colorado Rockies offer him the most money, he's going to go to Colorado. I don't think that that's going to happen, right? I just think that there's a little bit more that Soto cares about than just the money, though. I do.
That's not what he said. You might be right, but that's not what he said.
Well, listen, I understand that that's not what he said, but I also don't I'm not going to sit I don't see a world where the Toronto Blue Jays, who were in last place last year, all of a sudden are the most attractive destination for Juan Soto. Even if they're offering him $725 million and everybody else is offering him $700, I don't think he's going to go there. I just don't. I think there's got to be more to it than that. Am I wrong? I mean, like, and I believe me,
I have no idea if you're wrong.
Well, I understand your position on that. I'm just saying that, like, I don't think it's like as black and white as like he's gonna go wherever. Like, if the Blue Jays are paying him a penny more, then he's gonna go there. I just don't think that that's true.
I mean, I think there's a very good chance that you're right. But I also think there's a solid chance that you might not be. I don't know. I'll put it this way: like, I do think it comes down to Yankees or Mets most likely. Like, if you were to ask me, Dalton, put a percentage on where he goes, right? Yankees and Mets are going to combine to make up 85% of my predicted outcomes.
Yeah.
And then I'm probably going to go 5% Red Sox, 5% Dodgers, and the last 5% split among 12 teams. That's kind of how I see it. Like, I think it's most likely Yankees or Mets, but I don't think the chances of him signing elsewhere are zero.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, that, I don't know. For me, it's just like, I feel like Soto, and part of the reason I feel this way about him, when he got traded from Washington, at the age that he got traded out of Washington, he made it clear that he really felt that and that he was hurt by that. He wanted to stay there. He wanted to be that loyal guy that stayed there and built a winner there. And I think ever since he was traded away from Washington, his tone has been much more cold.
Yeah.
It's been much more like, this is a business. And it felt to me like that kind of broke him a little bit and turned him into just this cold-hearted killer who now is just like, you know what? There's no loyalty in this world. Whoever is going to show me it by paying me the most money and for the most years is where I'm going to go. Now, look, if it's a $1 million difference between New York and Toronto, what I think he would do is I think he'd go back to New York and he'd be like, beat their offer. And I think they'd do it and it'd be done. Mm-hmm. That's how I think that would actually go. Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah. Nobody does. All right. So let's move to this. Blake Snell signed a pretty solid deal here with the Dodgers. Last year with the San Francisco Giants, his lone year with the San Francisco Giants, 5-3 with a 3.12 ERA, 20 games started, 104 innings, 145 strikeouts. He was sensational in the second half of the year. So, I mean, obviously, the world saw this. There's some deferred money in the contract, right? Which drove everybody nuts. So I love it. It's awesome. But Blake Snell to the Dodgers. What's your reaction here, Dalton?
Well, I think it's important that first we react to the most recent breaking news of the night, which is I got a notification about 60 seconds ago that the Texas Rangers are in agreement with free agent catcher Kyle Higashioka on a 2-year deal with a mutual option. The ripple effect of Higashioka to the Rangers will be felt throughout baseball for decades to come.
Former Yankee great.
I mean, he did play pretty well for San Diego in the playoffs. I'll give him that. But catching depth in Texas, good for them. As far as Snell is concerned, it goes like I'm really excited. I think Snell is one of those guys that like fits the Dodger mold really well of a guy where it's stuff. He's a proven, 2-time Cy Young winner. He's won it in both leagues. Even this last season, he looked terrible for the first little while and then figured it out and was one of the best pitchers in baseball in the second half. Now he's going to get a full off season and a full spring training with what's considered to be some of the best pitching coaching in the league. I think he's going to be great. I think, just like Tyler Glass now, I think he's going to look really good. The only concern is, can he stay healthy while pitching for the Dodgers, which I think is a question that has to be asked of every starting pitcher on the Dodgers nowadays. It's definitely the biggest chink in the Dodgers armor right now is that, like, it feels to me as if we need to roll into the season with 8 to 10 starters to have a chance to have 3 or 4 come postseason. So, again, I mean, so I'm really excited. He's obviously a guy that Andrew Friedman has coveted um, ever since he was in Tampa and ever since he's been with the Dodgers. The Dodgers tried to sign him last offseason. The Dodgers tried to pry him from the Giants in the middle of this season. The Dodgers had tried to get him from the Rays way back when as well. And so I think this is something that's kind of been a long time coming. He's a West Coast guy, so I'm not surprised to see him sign on the West Coast. Although, it's a good thing for the Dodgers that the Mariners do not have a pitching need, because I'm guessing that might have been his first choice if they offered the same amount. But, look, I'm really excited about it. The rotation going into next season, Ohtani, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Snell, and when we get into our free agent predictions, I don't think they're done on the pitching front either. So, yeah.
It blows my mind when you just read that out. Ohtani, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Snell is your 4. Your 4.
I would argue Snell might be the number 1 if we're being honest. Like when he's on, but yeah.
But that's the thing, is any 4 of those guys could be their number 1.
Yeah.
They're all ace potential guys.
None of them, yeah. Like I'll put it this way: if any one of those 4 wins the Cy Young next year, are you shocked?
No. And that's the thing too. Is like, there was a lot of I would say not like pushback, but a lot of like, criticism in some ways of just like, why would the Dodgers need more pitching? And they just listed all of these guys that they have. And I'm like, well, last year going into the season, I don't think anybody really thought that the Dodgers needed all that much starting pitching. But by the time they got to the World Series, they were throwing bullpen games in the postseason. Like the number of pitchers that you need in a season is remarkable.
And oh, by the way, going into the postseason, starting Walker Buehler felt like a liability.
Yeah.
Like that felt like, oh man, we're going to throw this guy out in postseason games with how he's looked this season.
Right.
Ooh, boy. And he stepped up to it because he's a dog. But the Dodgers really going into this postseason had like one starter we felt good about, one starter we felt pretty okay about in Flaherty, and one starter that we were like shaking in our boots when he took them out in Buehler. Yeah. Like that's realistically how things felt going into the postseason. It's why I thought we'd lose to the Padres.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. People who are like, oh, the Dodgers really need more starting pitching. I'd just be like, well, and oh, by the way, 2 of those 3 guys are gone. They're free agents. So yeah, the Dodgers needed starting pitching.
Yeah, they definitely do. They definitely did. Okay. So prediction time.
Yeah, let's do it. I added 2 names to the list, by the way, that I felt like needed to be on there. I think you probably saw those. So
yes, I did. So now I have to kind of go back and figure out if it changes anything what I've already done. Let me just see here. Who did you add again? Okay. So pretty much no. I'll say that. Pretty much no. All right. So do you want to go? It's an odd number, but do you want to go 17-1 or 1-17 here?
Well, I disagree with how they're ranked. So
no. Let me make it clear. These are not ranked. These are ranked by when they popped up in my head. That's how they're ranked. So
okay. No, that makes me feel way better because I was like, Mike, this is not the order I'd put these free agents.
No. This is the order in which they popped into my skull.
Cool. So yeah, let's just go through them. I think on each one, you give your prediction, a couple words if you want to. I'll give my prediction, a couple words if I want to, and we'll rip through them.
Okay, 17-1 or 1-17.
Let's go 17-1 because the last one's the big one.
The last one's the big one. You're right. I would argue the last 3 are the big ones. I think those are pretty big ones. Okay, so first one we got. Let me see if I can do a little bit of something fancy here. I got some time, so I'm gonna see if I can make it look pretty. I think I can make it look pretty. Okay. So number 17 on our list, our very unorthodox list, Jurickson Profar. So Jurickson Profar, I mean, mine's pretty easy as far as I'm concerned. I think it's San Diego Padres or bust. I just think he's going to go back. I don't know that there's, obviously I'm not full disclosure here, by the way, neither Dalton and I are insiders. So it's not like we have crazy inside information or anything like that, but based on everything that I see, I would say the San Diego Padres are the clear choice here.
So I think it makes sense, but I have heard that it's unlikely that he goes back to the Padres.
Really?
I don't remember where I saw that reported, but at some point this offseason, I saw it reported. Now, Mike Schilt went on a podcast recently and said, well, I'd love to see us get something done with Profar. So maybe that moves the needle back in that direction. I'm not sure. I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but I had heard somewhere along the way that, he was unlikely to go back. That being said, I think it's as good of a prediction as any, to be honest. I'm fascinated to hear what you think. I put Yankees for Profar.
Wow. All right. So let me type this out. So here's what we have.
And that might, Profar, I should tell you as well, as I go through my list, these scenarios are all contingent on each other, right?
Oh yeah. Me too.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah.
So Profar to the Yankees is interesting. And I guess, Profar to the Yankees, I think, would be a cool little move for the Yankees. The thing that worries me about Profar and him signing with any other team is he hasn't been good for any other team, right? It seems like he gets sprinkled with magic dust whenever he goes to the Padres, and then he just turns back into a dud whenever he goes somewhere else. He spent that brief period in Colorado and couldn't make it work there, so then he goes back to the Padres, and then all of a sudden he becomes good again. Like, is Profar outside of the Padres even a smart move for anybody?
So I think some of it with him is that I think as long as he signs on a team that's going to be competing for a title,
yeah,
I think he'll have that fire underneath him, and I think he'll play well. That's just my read on the situation with Profar. I think he's got to have like an energized situation around him.
Yeah,
and I think the Yankees provide that. And from a Yankee standpoint, like at the very least, I think Profar is a solid upgrade over Alex Verdugo.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He makes that lineup deeper and more versatile. And, I think just provides them a lot of depth at that position that I think would be good for them.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Okay, so now we go to number 16 into Walker Buehler. Broke my heart in the World Series. Of course, he was an absolute dog in the postseason for the Dodgers. And to be quite frank, I do think that you're right. I don't think the Dodgers are done in the pitching department. I know that them signing Snell meant maybe they were done. I took that as like that might be their big ticket item. Like, I don't think they're going to go after Burns or Fried or any of those guys anymore. I think they could end up going after a Flaherty or a Buehler again. And I think Walker Buehler I think it just makes sense. I think Buehler goes back to the Dodgers.
I would love it if he went back to the Dodgers. I'd love to see it. There is another big name in the pitching side that I'm going to predict to the Dodgers, but I don't want to talk about too many of those names yet because I want to keep the suspense going a little bit.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I think Walker Buehler is going to be looking for a little bit more than the Dodgers are likely to give him. And I think a perfect team that he might go toward is a team that needs starting pitching badly, a team that is kind of growing into a contender, maybe, and a team that's really close to home for him. So I'm going with the Cincinnati Reds. I know it feels kind of out there, but Lexington's about an hour and a half from Cincinnati in terms of his hometown. The Reds desperately need a veteran starter like him in the room that's pitched in the postseason. I think that that's a guy that could really help them in that division. So this one's going out on a limb a little bit. I don't have any knowledge that leads me here. It's just something that kind of logically maybe makes sense to me would be Walker Buehler to Cincinnati.
Yeah. You kind of wonder when the Reds are going to try to push to make that next step forward. So a move like this does kind of make sense for them where it's just like, you know what, they're going to eventually need to make a move that kind of pushes them further than because I think people had at least some sort of expectations for them this year with the young and exciting roster that they do have, and they just didn't really go anywhere. Walker Buehler, I think, gets them closer. It's a veteran arm in that rotation. So it makes sense for me.
I think part of it for me too is they've made a habit out of signing these kind of mid-market guys. Yeah. I think of a Jamer Candelario last year, or Frankie Montas. they kind of like these mid-market veteran guys that
Yeah.
if they contend can be a big piece for them down the stretch. And I think something like a 3-year deal with Walker Buehler, like I think that's the kind of chance that they want to take and add
Yeah.
him into that rotation with Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo. I think that there is some budding talent in that rotation,
Yeah.
and I'm expecting them to add around the edges with some veterans, kind of like they did last year, and see if it sticks.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. All right. The number 15 for us is Gleyber Torres, the former Yankee. We go from former Dodger to former Yankee. Gleyber Torres kind of excelled, I would say, once he got moved to the leadoff spot in the later part of the year. And I do think that kind of inflated his market. I think that people looked at that and said, okay, that's something we can work with. Former top prospect. I'm looking at a team that desperately needs hitting, and we talked about it at nauseum last year. And there is kind of a parallel, I think, that could be seen here as a storyline. Gleyber Torres going to the Seattle Mariners, I think, makes a lot of sense, right? You date back number of years ago when Robinson Cano left the Yankees for the Mariners. I think you could see a similar thing here. Jorge Polanco was a dud for the Mariners last year, beyond a dud. Could they see Gleyber Torres as somebody that could hit in front of Julio Rodriguez in that lineup? I think it's something that makes sense. They have the money to do it. They have a chance to take on Gleyber Torres as a high upside player. So there you go. Gleyber Torres to the Mariners. I think there's no shot, by the way. Jack Curry even said it today. Again, he's the Yankees version of Jeff Passan. He said there's virtually no chance that neither Anthony Rizzo or Gleyber Torres go back to the Bronx.
I think that's a really good one, and not one that popped into my head, but that makes sense to me. So yeah, I could totally see it.
Yeah.
My pick for Gleyber Torres was the San Francisco Giants. Kind of similar thinking. Kind of similar thinking, a team that like desperately needs some thud in the lineup. And I think they are going to be wanting to shop for some bigger fish that they might not get. And so I think Torres is going to kind of fit into that little mold for them. He's also the kind of player I could see the Angels like overpaying.
Yep, I agree.
There are a couple guys on this list that I could see the Angels just going over the top for, and kind of blowing their load a little bit. I mean, they're just very Angels. But I think Mariners is a really good one for Gleyber. I think Giants is a really good one. Teams that just could really use a little influx of right-handed hitting and might be willing to deal with a little bit of defensive weirdness.
Yeah, defensive weirdness is a great way to put it. There have been days where Gleyber Torres looks studly at second base, and others where you just want to pull your hair out when he's over there. All right, number 14, Ha-Sung Kim of the San Diego Padres. I think he goes back. And again, this is contingent on another move that I have going a little bit later in the list, but I think this is contingent on that. I think Ha-Sung Kim, it's been well noted, well documented that he really enjoyed his time in San Diego. From what I understand, he wants to go back. So I think it's possible that Kim strikes a deal to go back with the San Diego Padres, despite the fact that they have about 17 shortstops on their roster.
So Ha-Sung Kim, I do. The Padres fans definitely love him. They do. I do think, though, that the Padres have a million shortstops on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of me is like, do they really spend money to re-sign a shortstop? I don't know. Maybe they do.
They would be the franchise to do that, though. They would.
They would. For Ha-Sung Kim, I actually said Dodgers.
Yeah,
I think that the Dodgers are clearly building their team in a way where they have their boppers and they have their table setters and defensive guys. Yeah. And like you've got your Tommy Edmonds of the world. You've got, part of it for me too is I have a feeling the Dodgers there's a chance they trade Gavin Lux this offseason in some capacity.
Okay.
If they do, I hope that they do it for something worthwhile. But I could see the Dodgers going in with an up the middle combination of Ha-Sung Kim and Mookie Betts. So I don't know. I like him. I like him better as an option than the other shortstop on this list that I could see them being involved on.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely something, because that was it was for Kim, it was either Padres or Dodgers for me, because I do think the Dodgers are gonna try to address that area.
Mhm.
Again, we'll see a little bit later in the list if we do address that, because we have seen the Dodgers tied to another shortstop name that's a little bit further up on the list. We'll see if that
Mhm.
goes the way that it goes. Okay, so number 13 for us, Shane Bieber. Now, missed all of last year, right? Or I shouldn't say all of last year. He made what, 2 starts last year before he got hurt. Former ace kind of guy. I think you're kind of taking a gamble here with the contract you sign him for, but it could be turning out to be something that, maybe you get, maybe not to the caliber of what Chris Sale gave the Braves this year, but that's the kind of upside you're looking for in a veteran pitcher. I think Shane Bieber, again, the beginning of my list is very, very boring. I think Shane Bieber likely goes back to the Guardians, but again, that's just because that's what I've read. That's a lot of what I've seen. I could see other teams getting in the mix, such as the Orioles and like I could see teams like that getting in it, but the Guardians is where I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, it's not a bad one at all. I think that makes sense. I think the Guardians
Oh, we
are
may have
not a
lost
team that
Dalton
like.
for a second.
Can you hear me?
It looks like we might have lost Dalton, so we'll see if we can get him back in here. But I do think that if again, Bieber's one of those guys where like if you asked me last year, like he was going to anchor that staff, but how much was he really going to anchor it? It was going to be one of those guys where um he was going to be one of those guys that I mean, and it looked at the beginning of the season where he was kind of Okay, are we back? Uh-oh. He can't find his hat. I also can't hear him, which is not great.
Couldn't find my hat, unmuted, but
Oh boy. What a day it has been. See, this is what happens when you go away for like 3 weeks to a month. Is you just hey now.
Just for you. I can't promise that you're going to like what I have to say the rest of the show, but I'll wear the hat for you.
Well, then I know it's coming, so I'm prepared. Okay, so just to get back to what we were doing again, I apologize for the technical difficulties that we were having. The internet went out in my office, and that's not the best way to go. So just to recap, so we were doing predictions, and here's what we have so far. Jurickson Profar, I had him back to the Padres. Dalton had him going to my beloved Yankees. Walker Buehler, I had him going back to the Dodgers. See, I have a lot of re-signings so far in my.
I have zero on my list.
What's that?
I have zero re-signings on my list.
See, your list is more exciting than mine. He's got Dodgers. I got Dodgers. Dalton has Reds, which I thought was fascinating. Gleyber Torres to the Seattle Mariners for me. Dalton has him going to the San Francisco Giants. I think both make a lot of sense. Ha-Sung Kim, here comes another re-signing. San Diego Padres. Dalton has him going to the Dodgers. And now we move to, before I was rudely interrupted by my own internet connection. We go to our number 13 free agent that we're going to be working with is Shane Bieber. Again, I don't know what our audience heard of my rant about this before I cut out internet-wise, but I think it's, look, like I said, very boring. I think he goes back to the Guardians, but again, it's a cheap 1-year sort of deal. I think he's going to end up getting some sort of prove-it deal he's going to end up signing for. I think there are going to be other teams in it. Obviously, I think any team that's going to be looking for starting pitching, the Mets, the Orioles, I think you could see those teams get in on it as well. But again, Bieber to the Guardians, keep it nice and boring. That's what I like to do with the show. Keep things boring.
Sorry, I'm occupying my dog a little bit here, but
that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, Bieber to the Guardians, nothing would be surprising about it. Obviously, there's a lot of familiarity there. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he chose to go back and even take a discount to stay there. I'm sending Bieber to a team that I feel pretty confident is going to spend some money this winter, and I haven't mentioned them spending money yet. I think Shane Bieber goes to the Detroit Tigers in a deal that I could see, resembling a little bit of what we saw with Jack Flaherty, except I don't think with Bieber it would be necessarily to trade him in a perfect world. Although if they ended up being able to trade him and net a prospect and it makes sense, that wouldn't shock me. So I just, Pitchers Park, a team that, after seeing what they did with Flaherty to kind of revive his career, I could see them selling Bieber on that pretty effectively. Yeah. He knows the AL Central really well. So to me, Bieber to the Tigers kind of makes some sense. Just does.
So I'm looking at so I do have, wow, my list sucks. All right. I agree, though. I think the Tigers are going to spend some money, and I was debating on whether or not they're going to sign somebody that's a little bit further down the list, but I ended up going in a different direction. Okay. The first and only reliever on the market, let's talk about Tanner Scott. I think he's the best reliever on the market. Power lefty arm. Was with the Marlins, ended up with the Padres last year. I think he's going to make a change in the National League. Listen, do I want the Yankees to get him? Absolutely, I do. Power lefty closer, I think that's what I want. But I think realistically, I think you could see Carlos Estevez out, Tanner Scott in with the Philadelphia Phillies. I think they could absolutely go with a closer here. I think this is going to be their big ticket item for the offseason. I think they're going to upgrade in that spot. I've never been high on Carlos Estevez. Obviously, he's a free agent as well. Tanner Scott, I think, is an upgrade in this department. Tanner Scott to the Phillies.
Makes a ton of sense. And look, I want to be clear. Most of what Mike and I are doing here, we're not people who are well sourced on things.
Right. Yeah.
We're just making guesses on what we think might happen. So take it all with a grain of salt. I'm going to go Red Sox for Tanner Scott.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the Red Sox are in a position where there's a lot of pressure on them to spend money. And I think there's going to be pressure on them to spend money on something that's premium.
Right.
And I don't have Juan Soto going there. So I think,
Spoiler alert.
Tanner Scott's the kind of thing that I could see them doing, going out and getting a premier reliever. I think the Red Sox have a young core that is something worth building around. So I'm really interested to see how they do so. Something like this, I think, would be a kind of logical next step for them.
Yeah, and I think it's a natural upgrade over Kenley Jansen, which is what they had last year. Obviously getting up there in age. Tanner Scott. The Red Sox are certainly looking to compete. They're obviously very in it for Juan Soto. I bet you if they don't get Juan Soto, they're going to be spending money elsewhere. They're ready to take the next step, right? Jaron Duran, Connor Wong, guys like that taking the next step last year. So we'll see where that ends up. Number 11, Jack Flaherty. Now, I had tons of trouble placing him based on a lot of stuff that I did before. But I'm going to say, and this is almost like I don't feel outrageously confident in this because I haven't heard anything in that department. But I do think that there's a little bit of familiarity here, and I'm not saying that it's likely or anything like that. But how about Jack Flaherty going back to the Orioles? Right, I think they're going to need to figure out a guy to place towards the top of that rotation because I do think, spoiler alert, I'm sorry, I think they're losing Corbin Burns. I think they're going to have to dip into the pitching market to try to keep themselves afloat in the AL East. I think it's going to get a lot more competitive. Obviously, especially if the Yankees get back Juan Soto, the Red Sox are obviously a team that's doing things. So in order to stay up there, I think they need to make a little bit of a splash in the pitching market. And Jack Flaherty, I don't think breaks the bank too much. I think it could be a high upside guy for the Orioles to go get.
Yeah, I could see it. Although, how did he pitch when he was in Baltimore?
I honestly, I don't even
If
remember.
I remember correctly,
They're bringing in the right field wall though, so it's bad for pitchers.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think he might have struggled there.
Yeah, he did struggle there. 6.75 in what looked to be 7 starts. He had a 6.75 ERA. But I mean, truth be told, I mean, I think what you saw last year was just a different pitcher. I mean, there might be some scar tissue in Baltimore in regards to that. I can totally see that being the case. But it wasn't just like how Flaherty struggled in Baltimore and didn't struggle anywhere else. I mean, for the year or two before that, he was beginning to struggle as well. So if he found something, there might be some sort of sense for a reunion there.
Yeah, no, his struggles were not exclusive to Baltimore. He had started to struggle in St. Louis before then as well.
Right.
That would just be the only thing that would keep me from buying into that. It wouldn't look. None of these things would shock me.
Yeah.
For Jack Flaherty, I actually have him going to the Yankees.
Oh boy.
Look, I mean, it just fits for me. Like, good looking, clean shaven righty. He's just a guy that I could see wanting to pitch in that market, and I can picture him in a Yankee hat really easily.
Yeah.
And I think the Yankees, he's the type of guy that they'd want to throw into the middle of that rotation, see what he becomes. You can never have too much starting pitching, especially because you just don't know if Luis Heel and Clark Schmidt are going to be dudes again next year.
Yeah.
They might, which would be great. And who knows what Marcus Stroman is or where Marcus Stroman is. You know what I mean? So I think a guy like Jack Flaherty can provide some stability to that rotation behind Colin Rodon, and to me makes some sense in New York. Again, no sourcing, just guessing.
Yeah. No, I've heard that they've been interested in him. They were obviously interested in him at the deadline last year. So there's definitely something there. I'm sure that Brian Cashman has, the perennial tire kicker, has kicked the tires on Jack Flaherty. So it would not surprise me at all. All right. So familiar face for you. Let's go to Teoscar Hernandez. I think this is clear cut. Dodgers. I think he goes back. I just listen. I know that the pushback to that is like maybe the money is too much, but I don't know. He fits so well in that clubhouse. It makes too much sense for me. I think Teoscar goes back.
Yeah, I actually, when I said that I didn't have anybody re-signing, this is the one that I forgot about. I do have Teoscar Hernandez coming back to the Dodgers.
There you
And
go.
this one, maybe it's wishful thinking. I really want the Dodgers to bring back Teoscar Hernandez.
Such a good fit. Such a
He,
good fit.
yeah, I mean, it's a perfect fit all around for that clubhouse, for that lineup. He has said over and over, like, this is where I want to spend the rest of my career. Like, he has really put voice to that. And so
Yep.
I think the Dodgers don't even necessarily have to be the largest offer here. I think they just have to make him a good offer.
Yeah.
And I think he'll come back. So I could see him coming back to the Dodgers like 3 years, 65 million, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're going to see something around there. I think they could even go 4 years, 80, something like that, something around that neighborhood, something around the $20 million a year range. He
Yeah,
earned it.
with some deferrals just to piss people off who don't
Oh, yeah.
understand. Yeah.
Yep. With some, make sure you throw deferrals in there. Absolutely. But it's too good of a fit for me. I think Tio goes back to the Dodgers. Let's talk about Christian Walker. This one's interesting for me. Because I've heard tons of different teams surrounding his name. Obviously, I think until Juan Soto signs, we're not going to really get much action on anybody. But Christian Walker, I got him going to the Yankees. I think they dump Anthony Rizzo. Christian Walker's a gold glove first baseman. He's going to give you some pop in that lineup. Yankees were one of the worst teams at first base last year. I think Christian Walker could be a good short-term on the cheap. I don't want to say cheap, but something that's not going to cost you 120 million. I think it's going to be more like 60. I think they could do something like that. I have Christian Walker going to the Yankees here. This is their after. I'm pretty sure people can understand where I'm going with Juan Soto, but after you get Juan Soto, I think this is the kind of secondary signing that they make to kind of complement that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have him going to the Yankees, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I have a different first baseman going to the Yankees. We'll talk about it, but I think Christian Walker. So he's the one who I had the toughest time with on this whole list. And it's partially because I wrote down 4 different teams, each of which I was like, oh, that might be the one. So I'll tell you who all 4 of them are, and then I'll tell you who my official pick is and why.
Okay.
I wrote down the Angels.
Okay.
Because he's a first baseman in his mid-30s who's like a kind of big name that I could just see them throwing a ton of cash at, right?
Regardless of whether or not they have Nolan Shonowell there or not,
it's the Angels. They don't care, right?
Right. Yep.
So that was one of the first teams that popped into my mind. The Astros make a lot of sense here.
Tons.
I think that like this could be a kind of a redux of the Jose Abreu signing.
Yeah.
Now, part of me also wonders, like, do the Astros start, trying to turn Yordan Alvarez into a first baseman, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. So that was one that kind of I thought of. The Mariners could be a natural fit, a team that could really use a right-handed power bat like that. But the team that kept coming back into my mind, and it might be kind of silly, but I just think he just feels like a Cardinal to me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I think it's, I feel like with Paul Goldschmidt on his way out, right? This is basically Paul Goldschmidt of a few years ago. Not quite the same level of player, but like a really good defensive first baseman that can hit. Like it just feels like the Cardinals always have a Christian Walker type of guy.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
it feels like a natural organizational fit for him. I don't know if the Cardinals are really trying to spend money like that, but like I could see it. So that's my official prediction, kind of just going off vibes, is St. Louis Cardinals.
Listen, I think that makes a lot of sense from like a narrative perspective. It certainly does. I take it that means that you have Paul Goldschmidt going elsewhere to, who knows? Maybe he becomes a Yankee. I
think Paul Goldschmidt is I don't have a great feel for where he goes. Like
me neither. I don't know.
He's the kind of guy that I could see landing with a non-contender on like a 1-year prove it deal and then getting shipped at the deadline.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be something like that. I think for him as well. He's not on our list, by the way. Not as not big enough of a free agent at this point of his career for us to touch on him. So okay, Christian Walker. I got him at the Yankees. Dalton with the Cardinals. Let's talk about Anthony Santander. This is another one of these guys where you see like 12 teams that are all like potentially in the mix for somebody like this, a guy whose market is genuinely, I think, waiting for Juan Soto to conclude, these power hitting outfielders. So here we go. Anthony Santander, for me, this is where I think the Mets' big money spending is going. I think Anthony Santander is one of the guys they bring in. They could absolutely, again, I think their lineup is something that I think could fit him in. I think that you can move a lot of these guys into DH roles. Obviously, I think JD Martinez is gone. Like I think you can have some flexibility here. This is one of the guys I think they're going to just throw money at. Nobody profiles well for that ballpark. So, but it's Anthony Santander. He's going to be a semi big ticket item, somebody in the $130, $140 million range, I'm sure. I think that's where they're going to land with him. I think he goes to the Mets.
Yeah, that's a good guess.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it makes sense. I have him going to the Padres. And I think this is where like Ha-Seong Kim walks, Jurickson Profar walks. San Diego looks at their outfield and goes, we could really use another bat. And I think somebody like Anthony Santander is just a really solid hitter to stick in the middle of that lineup.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of these are just kind of going off of vibes. To me, it just kind of fits. I could see it. So I'm going to go Santander to the Padres.
Yeah, no, listen, that makes a lot of sense. They're due to spend big money somewhere, right? They absolutely have to, because that's who they are. So I can absolutely see it. Let's move to one of the premier infielders in this market. Let's talk about Willy Adames. I was really debating. I think he goes to the West Coast somewhere. He's going to go to the NL West. Is it going to be with the Dodgers or with the Giants? And I think it's more likely he goes to the Giants. The Giants are dying to spend money on somebody. They're dying to do it. I think Willy Adames is that guy. They fill that shortstop need. I think it makes sense. Listen, I so badly wanted to put him with the Dodgers just because I've envisioned all year him being a free agent and him just heading over to Los Angeles. As I think it gets closer, I'm feeling a little bit more towards the Giants at this moment.
Yeah, I think he's another option. If I didn't send Glaber there, Adames is a guy that can make some sense there. Ha-Seong Kim's a guy that could make some sense in San Francisco as well. I think it makes some. I think it makes good sense. I kind of went off the board here. I have him going to the Red Sox.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And I think the Red Sox are going to swing and miss on Soto and kind of spend that money, at least some of it in the aggregate, on like a Willy Adames as like kind of a leader in that clubhouse full of younger guys. I think it's a really good fit there. And then, Tanner Scott joining the bullpen. I just think that that's what the Red Sox spending could look like, to just like kind of fortify the team around the edges. I think to take another step forward toward maybe being a wild card team this year. So to me, that it kind of feels like it could be a good fit. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ended up being a Dodger or a Giant either, though. I think there are a lot of destinations for him that could make sense.
Yeah, he profiles really well for that ballpark. I think there's going to be a lot of homers over that big monster. And again, the Giants is kind of like the Mets. Nobody profiles well for their ballpark. It just sucks. Yeah. All right, we go to number 6 on our list again. By the way, for those of you who have missed it, these are not ranked by like who we think is like of the top guys. No. Well, I mean, sort of, but it's who popped into my head first when I was making the list. So this is where we are. Alex Bregman. Now, I was very close to saying Tigers. I was very, very close to saying Tigers. Again, super boring. I think it makes sense he goes back to the Astros. I do. I think that there's a connection there between him and the city of Houston. Obviously, they love him over there. Even in his downfalls, they love him. I think there's a connection there. I don't think Alex Bregman leaves. I think he stays.
I mean, that was the other team I was debating with here.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you that it makes sense that he has a pretty good chance of staying there. I do think that the Astros are wanting to get younger. And so I'm not totally convinced he stays, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I think it's equal chances that he stays versus leaving. If he leaves, I like the Detroit Tigers as a landing spot for him.
Yeah, right.
I think him reuniting with AJ Hinch, providing a veteran bat in a lineup full of young guys, a little bit like the Adames fit with the Red Sox. A veteran guy you're putting into a clubhouse. He's going to a manager that he kind of knows and trusts in AJ Hinch. I just think it feels natural for me. So that, Tigers offseason for me would be Shane Bieber, Alex Bregman. I think if you're a Tigers fan, that's pretty decent.
That's pretty good.
So, I mean, I that's kind of how I see that going.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said, those were the two teams I was wrestling with. I think those are the two teams really that most people are talking about. I want to throw a team out there, by the way. I want to get your thoughts on this as well. And again, we're playing a guessing game. But the Seattle Mariners in this mix, I think, make a lot of sense too. I think that's obviously they need the hitting, but they also need this position. Like Alex Bregman, I think he moves somewhere else in the AL West, kind of sparks something between them and Houston. I think it would make a lot of sense there too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the Mariners would love to make that happen. I think the Mariners, like any infielder on this list, really, I mean, even an outfielder, any cat on this list would make sense for the Mariners to be going after.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. Former Met Pete Alonso. Obviously big production. He's going to hit whatever, 210, 220, but he's going to drive in 100 runs. Like that's kind of the player that he is. I don't know. He feels like a Met to me. I think they're going to listen. Like I said, I have them missing on Soto. So they're going to spend that money. And I think that money is going to go to guys like Anthony Santander, guys like Pete Alonso. I think they're going to bring him back. He feels like a Met. I know that there was something with him in the organization. I don't know what that is, but I think Pete Alonso goes back to the Mets. I was really wrestling with the idea of him possibly going to the Astros because I knew that was something that you and I had talked about at the trade deadline this season that could have made a lot of sense. But I agree. I think he's going to go to the Mets. I think the Astros are going to look in a different direction in that department. Pete Alonso to the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to tell you you're crazy for saying a guy is going to go back to where he is, right? So, sure, I get it. I have him going to the Yankees.
I knew you were going to say that.
I just do.
You were going to say that. Yeah.
And again, he's got the same list of teams as Christian Walker for me, right? Like, I don't think Cardinals. He doesn't give me that same Cardinals vibe, but Mariners, Astros, Angels. This is exactly the kind of flashy signing the Angels try to make on clearly a very flawed player who has really exciting ticket selling upside, right?
Right.
That's exactly the kind of thing the Angels would do. But as you've probably already figured out based on the other things that I have happening here, you and I are going to differ on the last player.
Yeah.
Partially just for the entertainment of the show, but if the Yankees miss out on Juan Soto, I think that an offseason of Pete Alonso, Jack Flaherty, and Jurickson Profar could be very much in the cards. That's kind of what I think that might look like. I know you would not be happy because the sum of those parts is never Juan Soto because Juan Soto is a pretty singular entity. But that's how I think this goes if they don't get Soto. Now, if the Yankees do re-sign Juan Soto, I think Pete Alonso to the Astros makes a lot of sense. At that point, I agree with you. Christian Walker potentially makes sense with the Yankees. And then I think that would put the Mets in contention on guys like Santander. I think it puts the Mets in contention on a guy like Ha-Seong Kim, Jurickson Profar, all those same guys I could start seeing becoming Mets.
Right.
So a lot of ripple effects on different things here. The way my puzzle pieces fit together starting with the number one piece, it trickled down to me with Alonso making sense with the Yankees. I think a power hitter like that, all the Soto stuff aside, right? a power hitter like that would crush in that ballpark.
Yeah.
I think Yankee fans would learn to love him very quickly. I can picture him in a Yankee uniform very easily. I could just see it. So again, a vibe.
Yeah. I listen, I've never been a guy that felt that Pete Alonso fits well in a Yankee lineup as it's currently constructed, just because of, I mean, like, obviously Aaron Judge is a mammoth, but like guys like Judge and Stanton and these kind of like, high K rate,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like he's another one of those players. As productive as he is, it's an upgrade over what you have with Rizzo last year, but at the same time, it's, does it really make sense from that perspective? It's just it's a lineup construction thing for me.
Yeah,
That's my problem. It's not Juan Soto. It's that's what.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, that's part of why that's part of why I see it though, is because I'm so used to seeing like these big lumbering power hitters in the pinstripes. So.
Yep. Oh boy. All right. So yeah, it's all right, Dalton. I'm not upset at you or anything like that. Let's go to Max Fried. I guess, I mean, it depends on really where you put Roki Sasaki, but one of the 2 or 3 top pitchers that are available on the open market. Max Fried, this is where I think the Red Sox spend their money. I think this is where they get their pitcher. I think Max Fried makes sense here. Top of the rotation guy. This is where they spend their money. Max Fried to the Sox.
He's, again, this is a really silly way to talk about this, but I can picture it, right?
Yeah.
Some guys you can just picture in certain uniforms. I can picture him pitching in Boston. I don't hate that. For me, Max Fried is going to be the Mets' big pitching signing this offseason. I think he's a guy that they've just seen a ton of over the years with Atlanta. I think he makes a great addition to that rotation. He's a guy that I think they trust in the postseason. And I haven't had the Mets sign a starter yet on this show. So I think Max Fried to the Mets makes quite a bit of sense.
Yeah, well, I think, I'll be honest with you. I think, and we'll talk about this once we get down to the bottom of the list. But I do think the Mets are not done in the pitching department. I think that there's 2 more pitching signings that they're going to make at some point in the offseason. And I think we could see those relatively quickly. Like I said, they made one today with Frankie Montas. I think that could be one of them, but I think that there's a few others that they could make as well. And I agree. I think they're going to be in on one of these pitchers, the Mets, and obviously Blake Snell going to the Dodgers took one off the board really quickly. All right, let's talk about the mystery man here. This one's not going to be about money. It's just going to be about where he wants to go. Roki Sasaki. I mean, I think, listen, I was like, just looking at them, I was a bit like, there was something about Roki Sasaki that I liked a little bit more about him than I liked about Yamamoto, right? Just vibes, right? As we've become accustomed to saying, just vibes. I love Roki Sasaki. Spoiler alert, I don't think he goes to the Yankees. I will say this, though. I think the Padres are the spot. I think they're the spot. He seems to have a relationship with you, Darvish. I think there's something to be said about that. I think that there's a possibility that Roki Sasaki doesn't go to the Dodgers and he ends up going to the Padres. Shaking things up, Dalton. I'm shaking things up.
Yeah, I mean, Roki Sasaki to the Padres has, there's about as much steam behind that as there was to Shohei Ohtani going to place A, B, C, D. No, Roki Sasaki is going to be a Dodger.
Makes me sick.
I don't need to explain it. The Dodgers have cornered that market. He wants to play with Ohtani. He wants to play with Yamamoto. They want to be Team Japan. Roki Sasaki will be a Dodger. And by the way, in 2026, Munetaka Murakami will be a Dodger as well.
Now, you want to talk about a guy that I want to be a Yankee? I want Munetaka Murakami as well. Because, by the way, that's a position of need for us, too. You don't need a first baseman. You don't need one. It drives me nuts.
Munetaka Murakami, I think. I mean, can he play third?
Can he play? I don't know. How much Japan League have you watched? I don't know.
Not enough.
Oh boy. All right, but that's going to be interesting. I look, if I'll say this. I did like to shake things up. If Roki Sasaki does not end up going to the Dodgers, I will legitimately be surprised. I'll be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, if Roki Sasaki doesn't end up going to the Dodgers, I would bet money that either Corbin Burns or Max Fried becomes a Dodger, if not Sasaki. Because I think the Dodgers are not done at the top of the pitching market. But I think Sasaki is the name that makes the most sense. I think it's the name that they covet the most. I mean, the connection between him and the Dodgers goes back uncomfortably far. Like that's happening, I think.
Yeah. Well, listen, lucky you. Like I said, it's a great time to be a Dodger fan.
It is. Hey, really look, Mike, what did I tell you going into the postseason this year, right? I remember I told you, I said, look, I'm not that confident going into this postseason. I was wrong about that. But I also said that I think the Dodgers in 2025 are a legitimate contender to break the all-time wins record. This is part of why, is because the Shohei Ohtani signing did not take money away from their pockets for this offseason. It added money into their pockets for this offseason.
Yep. 100%. Okay. Corbin Burns, a lot, like I said, viewed as, maybe the top pitcher in the market. Like I said, it depends on how you feel about Roki Sasaki, but I think, all things considered, Corbin Burns might be the guy. I said the Mets weren't done. This is where I think the big chunk of change goes. I think Corbin Burns is as good as a Met. They're going to sign a big pitcher. Corbin Burns is as big as they come. As far as available guys are concerned, I think Corbin Burns ends up with the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes as much sense as anywhere. If I didn't send Max Fried there, I'd probably be sending Corbin Burns there. Yeah. I'm sending him to Philly.
Oh, gross. Oh,
I don't know why. But like, man, imagine that rotation.
I know. Ew.
And I think Philly, like I haven't had Philly spend anything on this list. I don't think that they're going to be a huge free agent player, but I think they'll make one splash. And I think Burns could be the guy they go for. I will say this, I could very much see Corbin Burns on the Dodgers. That would not surprise me at all either. But I think, I don't know. I'm not going to say I think Philly. It's just kind of the team that kept popping up in my brain, and so I wrote them down. I could see Philly. I could maybe see Atlanta. I could see a lot of different teams for Burns, but I'll go Philly.
The Red Sox, I think, are a team you got to look at too as well. I think at this point in the offseason, you're kind of like we've kind of established who the big spenders are going to be. Like, even if they haven't been big spenders in the past couple of years, like, it looks like the Red Sox are ready to spend. It looks like the Mets are finally ready to explode. Like, it's kind of sad too, because the Orioles, in a way, are in a very similar position to what the Yankees are, except I think the Orioles have almost zero chance of getting Corbin Burns back. Like, that I think is really kind of a shame. So, again, I think Oriole fans are going to have a broken heart this offseason in a way.
I another team that comes to my mind for Corbin Burns and for Max Fried, like, I do wonder just how aggressive the Tigers might be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm starting to imagine a Tigers rotation with either Burns or Fried at the top of it with Skubal and some of those other young arms around them.
Jeez.
I mean, that, like, because that's a team that, like, a lot of ownership groups like to talk about, well, look, once the players show us they're a contender, we're going to start investing them like they're a contender.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the Tigers roster is as good as their results were this year, but you got to give them credit, man. Like, they found a way to get there. So
yeah, and let's not mistake the Tigers for a team that's like the Marlins. Like, the Tigers will spend when they're ready to spend.
Right. We've seen it. Yeah, that's the thing. We've seen the Tigers build what were kind of considered super rotations or super teams in the past.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to do something like that this offseason, but like, I could totally see an offseason of like Alex Bregman, Max Fried, or Corbin Burns, and then maybe even like a Glaber, right? Like, there are a lot of different names I think I could see making sense in Detroit.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good name to throw out there as well. Okay, here we go. Big ticket item. Juan Soto. Listen, obviously this is, look, I hope by the time we do another show, Dalton, that Juan Soto is somewhere. I don't know when our next show is going to be, whether it's next week or the week after or whatever. But I hope by then
I just don't know what the hell else we can talk about with this.
Yeah, really. That's and that's again, that's the problem with that, with not being an insider, is that we know almost as much as anybody, any normal human. But I guess you can understand where I'm going with this, right? I do think Juan Soto goes back to the Yankees. I'm choking on my words saying that, just because I know that when I put it out there, it's more likely not going to happen just because I said it. But it's almost like placing a bet, right? But it was going to hit, but because I bet it, it doesn't. I think Juan Soto goes back. There is something, like I said, to be said about the relationship that he's built with the organization over the past year. I think if it could be, again, as far as I'm concerned, it could be just as simple as, if Hal Steinbrenner is willing to spend the money and get to the top of the market, that might be all it takes, right? Like, that might just be it. And I'm okay with that. I just think the only way that Juan Soto gets pried away from the Yankees is if the money goes somewhere that is irresponsibly big, right? If you're seeing Juan Soto make total dollars of up to 775 million, I don't know that the Yankees go there. I think if he goes to 700, 705, 720, I think there's a possibility the Yankees go there. But I just think there's something to Juan Soto being with the Yankees last year. And I think, and I pray to God, Dalton Brown, I pray to God, because I will say this, okay? If Juan Soto does not come back, I do think the Yankees as an organization are fucked. I do. I think we are fucked. It's not like, I do. And this is not just me being upset, but like, nobody can convince me that like an offseason of Anthony Santander and Christian Walker and Walker Buehler is going to make it all better. Like, it's not. Like, we're going to be, that's an 84 win team. It's an 84 win team and maybe a wild card berth. Maybe. It's almost kind of like that clip from Waterboy, we suck again. Like, it's one of those. It's desperate. The Yankees are desperate to get this done. They need to get it done. Juan Soto back to the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that wouldn't surprise anybody. I think the Yankees are probably the most likely team.
Yeah. No, listen, I get it.
Look, I'm going with the Mets. Mike, I don't like it. I don't want it to happen. I don't want the Mets to sign Juan Soto. I want to be clear about that. As a Dodger fan, I want him either to be playing in Dodger blue, or I want him
far away.
Like, and I know we just played the Yankees in the World Series, but that is still far away. That's a team that we're not contending with in any kind of standings. He can go hang out in the AL. That's fine. I don't want him in the NL if he's not with the Dodgers. But I just think that the Mets, I don't know why, but I can really picture it. And I think the Mets are crazy enough to drive the price to a place that the Yankees throw their hands up and go, you know what, we're not going to be stupid. We're not going to play this stupid game. Fine. And I think the Yankees, there's potential that prideful organization eventually looks at Soto and goes, listen, if this amount ain't enough for you to want to stay in pinstripes, you don't want to be in pinstripes bad enough. I think that'd be silly, but I'm just saying I can see it. I don't know. Whereas I think the Mets are shameless enough to just go to whatever number they need to get it done. Which, I mean, I don't know, man. I hope for your mental health he signs with the Yankees. I genuinely do.
I think people around me in my life need to be prepared for my crippling depression when Juan Soto, I shouldn't say when, if Juan Soto signs somewhere else. I will fall, I will want to, I texted you this before. I will want to discontinue this podcast. I will not want to do this anymore. I won't even want to watch baseball. I won't even want to watch baseball. I'll just be like, fuck this. Like, what's the point even? Like, because it would prove how unserious we are, or how unserious we've become.
I think it would just prove, to me, it would just be like, well, I guess the Yankees are just like everybody else now.
Yeah, yeah,
You
that's
know what I
exactly
mean?
what it would say.
Whereas I think part of what has defined being a Yankee fan and part of what's defined the Yankees as an organization is that they are like objectively not like everyone else, right?
Yeah,
Like I think, even it's funny, like when I visited Yankee Stadium, like the stadium itself, I think is kind of meh. Like it's fine. It's nice, but it's super corporate and that's, it's whatever.
mhm,
But you just can't help but feel, oh, the Yankees play here though. And that's like there's a presence to that, right?
yeah,
And to me, part of it is that it's just like they are the inevitable force in baseball historically. And I think not being able to retain a guy like Juan Soto is not just a chink in that armor, but a dent in that armor. And
yeah,
something that like sends a message to baseball that like, hey, we're here for the taking a little bit. Um, and so I agree. Like I think the Yankees should do everything in their power to keep him there, even if it means spending an amount of money that you think is stupid. I do.
yeah,
I'm not 100% convinced that Hal Steinbrenner feels the same way. So we'll see. Um, Now, I want to be clear. If you were to put a gun to my head and say, where does he sign? I think I'm probably saying the Yankees, right? Like part of why I'm saying the Mets here is because I knew that everything that you're going to put in your free agents is based on the supposition that he stays with the Yankees, right?
mhm,
So I'm building you an alternate universe where he doesn't and what I think is going to happen if he doesn't.
yeah,
I still think it's most likely Yankees. If you were to ask me to put percentages on it, I'd say 60% Yankees, 25% Mets, 5% Dodgers, 5% Red Sox, and then like
the remaining 5% being
it's kind of a mix,
right.
you know. But I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion that he stays with the Yankees. I think it's more
No,
likely than not, but I think it's about 60%. So I
yeah,
don't blame you for being on pins and needles. I'll say that.
yeah. I'll phrase it like this. Um, there's two things I want to get off my chest, and then we can move. But um, I'll phrase it like this. I think the Mets and the Yankees. I think the possibility for the Mets and the Yankees make at least about 90% of the pie chart. I don't think that there's like I said, Yankees, Mets are the teams that are in it. Everybody else has a puncher's outside shot, with the Red Sox probably being at the forefront of that group. Like I would probably say similar to what you said, probably 55 to 60% Yankees, 35 to 40% Mets, and like 3% Red Sox, 1% Blue Jays. Like it's something like that. I think that makes that up. And the other thing, for any Yankee fan that is suggesting that spending the money elsewhere is the better thing to do, fuck you. Like I'm just saying that right now. Fuck you. Because why you're the reason why this sort of perceived behavior of the front office that we all deem to hate becomes acceptable in the eyes of the front office. That is the reason, because you've kind of come together and said, well, not all Yankee fans will hate you. Yeah, but all like the real ones, the fucking Yankee fans that actually want to win, yeah, we're the ones that hate you. So if you're there suggesting that it's not all terrible for the Yankees if they don't sign Juan Soto, it could be they could spend money here and spend money there and all that shit. Fuck you. Fuck you. So there we go, Dalton. I just had to get that off my chest. My apologies.
Hey, it's a position you've made very clear and one that I'm not surprised by. So yeah, I mean, and I agree that people suggesting don't spend money on him, spend it in aggregate elsewhere. That's not how these things work. The sum of other parts does not equal Juan Soto necessarily. That's just not how this works. But
Top five player in baseball. You're not replacing him.
I have a couple other random things to
Yeah.
throw.
Yeah.
First, I want to throw out a trade that I have drawn up for the Dodgers that I can just envision. And then I also wanted to throw like 3 free agent names at you and get a rapid fire response on you, just guys that we haven't talked about.
Sure.
All right. So, Dodgers trade. Because I've been trying to figure out where Gavin Lux goes. Because I think Gavin Lux is very possibly on the move with Mookie Betts saying that he's returning to the infield. And so I'm trying to think of where that means he goes. Here's a trade that I could see happening. Gavin Lux and James Outman to the St. Louis Cardinals for Ryan Helsley, Nolan Arenado, and 2 prospects, one of which becomes a starter by 2028, and a guy that people are wondering how in the hell do the Dodgers find this guy. Just a gut feeling trade that I could see happening. What do you think?
Okay, so it's Gavin Lux and James Outman for Helsley, Arenado, and 2 prospects, one of which is going to miraculously turn into Clayton Kershaw for
prospects who are not highly thought of now and are very young.
So, okay, so explain to me this, and I'm not antagonizing the trade in any way. Why would the Cardinals do that?
Because Gavin Lux is a young, up-and-coming hitter who showed flashes of being very good last year. James Outman has looked very good at the major league level at times, and I think like just needs a place where he can play. And so I think that those are 2 promising young potential players, and I think the Cardinals know that they need to get younger, and I think they really want to get out from under the contract with Arenado, and I think the Dodgers will pay him. And so I think it's a salary dump of Arenado. It's because I think Gavin Lux is a legitimately valuable piece here. He's not a guy that I'm eager to get rid of unless we're getting like real value in return. And so I think like Lux and Outman give them a couple up the middle players to build off of. And I think you're trading away a reliever, which a reliever is only worth his weight in how much of a contender you are realistically. Yeah. And you're trading away an aging player whose contract you want to get out from under.
Okay. Are the Cardinals eating any of Arenado's money?
I mean, I'll put it this way. I think the Dodgers would get them out of more than half of it in a deal like this.
Okay.
I think that would be.
I don't see anything super duper wrong with that trade. I mean, I think it's possible the Cardinals might want to get something more if they're giving up Helsley, but I don't see super anything wrong with that. What do the Dodgers do with Muncy at that point?
So I think that's where things get kind of crowded for the Dodgers, but I think what ends up happening, the Muncy can play a number of positions, right? He can play third, he can play second, he can play first, he can DH. And I think Shohei Ohtani is going to DH every day.
Yeah.
But I think you could see the Dodgers move things around elsewhere. So think of imagine this. Mookie Betts becomes your everyday shortstop. Okay. Max Muncy splits time with Ha-Seong Kim at second and splits time with Nolan Arenado at third.
Okay.
Where Max Muncy is basically a full-time player, but between Ha-Seong Kim and Nolan Arenado, I think those guys both become like a little bit more than part-time players.
Okay.
Then Miguel Rojas becomes like an injury insurance policy.
And what? Tommy Edman becomes your everyday center fielder?
Tommy Edman's the everyday center fielder. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And I think that's the plan already for Edman.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know that I feel like I would put back. I mean, this is just something so small, but I don't know. Ha-Seong Kim is a monster at shortstop.
Yeah.
You'd want would you rather have Betts at shortstop than Kim and not the other way around?
Definitely not defensively, no. And again, I'm just thinking out loud. Like I'm trying to figure out a way for this to work. Part of the reason that I would like to see this happen is just because like Nolan Arenado grew up a huge Dodger fan. Okay. And like I think it's been really telegraphed for a long time that he wants to be there. And I mean, he posted an Instagram post the other day with Dodger Blue as the song on it. And it was him. It was him at a Laker game and him at a USC football game and just him gallivanting around Southern California where he's from.
Yeah, right.
I just think he's a guy that and he has a no trade clause. So he can waive that for certain teams.
Right.
And I just know he'd waive it for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And so I think if the Cardinals want to get out from under that contract, that's a place that like they'd be most likely to make it happen.
Yeah.
The only question there becomes like, I think if he goes to the Dodgers, I think he's not a full-time player, which I don't know if he waits for that,
It's weird. Yeah, I mean, Arenado is not nearly the player that he was
like
years ago.
Right.
But he's still a useful piece. He's still a phenomenal defensive third baseman. But the bat has slowed over the past couple of seasons. Okay, so what do you have as far as you had a couple more free agents you wanted to talk about, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah. Luis Severino.
Ooh. I would have said Mets before today. To me, I think it's going to be someplace random. I think it could be like Pittsburgh. I think it could be someplace like the Diamondbacks or something like it's going to be someplace like that. I think because I think with the signing of Montes, because I have a very clear vision of what the Mets are going to do with their pitching staff. I think they're going to bring in one of the big guys, whether it's Fried or Burns. I think they're going to bring back Sean Manaea, and I think that might be it. That might be they're done. So now I kind of think Severino goes elsewhere. So I'll say Diamondbacks. Why not?
Okay. I like Pirates better than Diamondbacks, but I could see it. The thing with the Diamondbacks is I think they're going to be cutting back a little bit, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's possible. It's certainly
because I've heard Zach Gallen is a guy potentially getting traded. Which
I know Arizona is desperately trying to trade Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking what's a cheaper option to kind of replace that void in the rotation every day or every week. So Severino, I think, would be somebody to fill that gap.
Sure. Two names that came to my mind, Braves. Just looking for another veteran starter to add in. Expensive as some of the other guys. Giants are wanting to set money on fire, and I think would like a guy like Severino. Another name kind of in that category that I feel like he could be this season, that like this offseason's James Paxton, and a guy that I could see maybe signing with the Dodgers, but we'll see, is Jose Quintana.
Okay. Like I said, I would have said Mets 2 seconds ago, but I don't know. I'll probably say the same thing. Something like Pittsburgh, maybe a team like I didn't have a pitcher going to Detroit. Maybe the Tigers get in somewhere like that. It's going to be one of those teams. I'll say Detroit. I think they're going to get in the pitching market based on the predictions I had before. I'll say the Tigers get in the pitching market here.
Cool. And then I got one more name, Blake Trinan. I think he comes back. I hope he comes back. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's likely. I think that they could bring him back. It's not going to break the bank. I think that the Red Sox could be a team that look at him if they don't sign a back-end guy, somebody like Tanner Scott or something like that, or Carlos Estevez. So I think that there's a chance that it's either going to be something like the Dodgers or the Red Sox that vouch for his services.
You know, it's another team that I would mention on a guy like Trinan is the Minnesota Twins.
Interesting.
And I don't know what to make of the Twins, but I'll tell you this much. I don't think there's any truth to the rumors of them shopping Correa. I think the Twins, like, they're seeing a lot of changes happen at the top of the organization on the GM side and everything else. And I think like they want to make some kind of splash is my guess. And like I could see them dipping into the relief market because that was definitely an area of need for them last year.
Yeah.
I also think they could be in on any of these cheaper starters. Like I could see the Twins getting in on a Severino, a Quintana, even like a Walker Buehler maybe.
Yeah.
So just a thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's legit. I think that's a real thing. So it's interesting that you brought those names up because I mean, they're certainly going to be valuable somewhere. But I don't know, they fell short of the list. But you know what? Those three names make it an even 20, Dalton. So that's good for the OCD in me. So all right. That does it for us. So Dalton, any last words before we say goodbye? And again, hopefully Juan Soto's wearing a Yankee jersey next week.
No, I mean, I think we've more than covered it, man. That was a lot of fun, and sorry for the technical difficulties. We're doing our best.
We're doing our best, and like I said, that's what we get for taking a month off. It's what we do. Okay, so again, during the season, our off-season schedule is a little bit different. We'll come back at some point when news breaks. When Juan Soto signs, I'm sure we're going to do something. But usually it's every Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern time, right here on the Grid Network, exclusively on the Grid Network. So again, we'll see you when we see you. Enjoy the MLB offseason. Enjoy the winter meetings. It's one of my favorite times of year. I'm a December type of guy anyway. I'm a big Christmas guy, so this is a big time of year for me. And I love baseball, so the winter meetings are a big deal for me. That's a lot of I have fun with free agency. I'm a big fan of baseball on paper. On the field, it's less. Baseball on paper is really fun. All right. That does it for us. It's Dalton Brown. I'm Mike Guido. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast. We'll talk to you soon.